In a world that is robbing dudes of their dudeness, three normal, everyday, middle-aged dudes are taking a stand for dudes everywhere. Join us as we talk about life as a dude in today's world.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to today's episode of the Dudefinity podcast. I'm Sterling, and joining me as always, Tony Award-winning actor for his rendition of Rum Tum Tugger in the Broadway musical Cats, Jordan. Today's
Thank you, Sterling. I really appreciate the introduction today. I finally am glad that somebody has recognized my creativity and my ability to perform in multiple different venues. No, just joking, y'all. Not an actor, especially not a Tony Award-winning actor, but I am here to ham it up with Sterling for about an hour and talk to you guys a little bit about a topic that's really important to Sterling and I. Something that we feel like kind of sets forth the tone of our entire podcast. And, so we're going to get to that topic in a second, but just wanted to remind everybody, as always, ping our inbox, hit us on the social media sites, Instagram, TikTok,
YouTube.
to be set up.
They'll be set up by the time this goes live anyways. So
So we'll slice that out, but you know what I mean?
Contact information will be in the description.
Yeah, and please hit us up with questions, comments, anything you'd like Sterling and I to talk about. Anything you're looking for our opinion on. Not that they really matter. Opinions, we all know what those are like, but and Sterling and I are those. So, but please, by all means, let us know. Anyway, go, dude. Sorry.
So today's discussion is going to be on the topic of what the hell is today's topic? I
bet you can't successfully remember it.
Success. We're going to be talking about success, what it means, what it is, how to get it.
And how it makes you
How it makes you feel deep inside in your loins. Speaking of success, it sounds like the Dallas Mavericks have successfully fired Nico Harrison, so that's cool.
Yeah, man, I don't know what we want to call our awards, but he definitely earned every bad one, I think, in Dallas that you could ever get. So I do think that it is interesting. It may be the first time in my life, at 41 years old, as a sports fan, that I've seen someone get fired because of how the fans feel about something. The players, I don't know if you heard, one of the main reasons that he got fired was because the players didn't enjoy playing at home because all they chanted was "Fire Nico."
Well, it's a tough sell to trade somebody that's a generational type player, even though that they did get the number one pick, but boy, getting rid of Luka, that's
It's also kind of hard though, because you hear the stories out of his camp or out of the NBA circles in the rumor mill where Luka's camp wasn't picking up for the Mavericks. It indicated that he didn't have interest in playing there for long term. Had also indicated through his conditioning and everything else that sometimes he just didn't want to play basketball. So it does kind of make you wonder somewhere, there's two sides to every story, and then there's the truth, and somewhere in the middle of all that lies the truth. I don't know if we'll ever know, but I do know that, they were able to get Anthony Davis out of the deal, which, good, bad, or ugly, Anthony Davis is a top 10 player when healthy, which is the key. Availability is the best ability.
Yeah.
And they got the potential for generational talent in Cooper Flagg. So, I wonder if now that this dark cloud's away, if they start to play better at home and all of a sudden you start to see them go on a little run. Wouldn't surprise me a bit. And then Uncle Drew is lying in wait to make his return to this team. And when he comes back,
I don't know.
That's going to be
I think
team,
them
man.
thinking that this is a win now team. It is kind of silly, to be perfectly honest.
No, it's definitely a long haul.
It's a long haul team.
It's a long haul.
I don't see them winning a title again until well after Anthony Davis and Uncle Drew are long since gone. Well, I guess we'll see. I guess we'll see.
Let's be honest about this though, too. The other thing is would you really look at with Uncle Drew and Anthony Davis as the Robin to Cooper Flagg's Batman? No. So where's his Robin? His Robin is still out there to be found, so there's still some building to do. I think they have pieces they can trade. I mean, you go ahead and swing a trade with any of these veteran teams that are looking to win now for a guy like an Anthony Davis, where you expected big to play 58 to 65 games in today's NBA. Feel like it's a good fit. He does play that amount of games a lot of times. It just seems like he misses the important ones sometimes. But I think they've got some tradable pieces, and if Kyrie comes back healthy, they could certainly. Dallas is a fun team to watch right now, and I'm real curious to see what Michael Finley does with that as kind of leading the ship right now.
It's interesting, especially with a homer like Michael Finley. But
Yeah,
man, that Western Conference is brutal. And then you've got there is a juggernaut forming in San Antonio. It's like on the
yeah,
horizon, you can see it coming. And I think a lot of these times teams are just biding their time until it gets there. So I
yeah.
think in the next 3 or 4 years, trying to beat San Antonio is gonna be hard, man. When
Well,
Wemby
it's a
hits his
building process, right?
prime, that is gonna be an absolute freight train of a team.
Well, think about, I mean, to your point, think about what they're building. De'Aaron Fox was out the first, 9 game or 7 games of the season, and they went 6-1. And then all of a sudden they've got De'Aaron Fox back in the mix with the young guys that they have in Stephon Castle, and then you got veterans and Harrison Barnes. That's definitely a guy that I think, he's never a guy that's gonna win you a championship, but he's a glue guy that
Mhm.
helps you build a championship. And you need those guys, kind of like an Iguodala or, Andrew Wiggins or, just those guys that kind of can get you a bucket when they're called
Mhm.
upon, but don't need to be called upon every night. And yeah, they're going to be fun to watch. So, I mean, would you say that they have been building for this moment for the last couple of years? Safe to say, right?
Are you talking about San Antonio?
Yeah.
Yeah, I for the last couple of years, yeah, for sure.
And teams oftentimes build throughout the season too, right? Like, you build through wins, you build through
Mhm.
losses, you get better. Um, I only say that to say because I'm leaning down the path to go, hey, my New England Patriots are 8-2, buddy, and they're sitting at the number 2 seed of the AFC East, and we are building for a long run. So I just wanted to point out that championship teams are built throughout the season and in the off season.
That's
And
you're gonna confuse people and make them think that I like a different team than you. The way you're saying that,
yeah, yeah,
I don't
yeah.
like.
Okay, I'm sorry. The New England Patriots are 8-2. That's the better way to
Full
say it.
disclosure, not that much of a football fan personally, but, I'll watch the Pats when they make the playoffs. I'll be
Yeah, that's a lie. You just like football with a U and not 2 O's.
fact. Yeah, that's fact. That's fact.
So, yeah, you like legitimate football.
Football.
So, hey, quick question for you. Did you see the government's gonna open back
I
up?
did.
It's kinda wild, right? Like, imagine
Yeah.
that, they're back to the job doing their job.
Here's the thing
Uh,
I don't understand about that. If the whole point was to get a better negotiation on Medicaid, essentially Medicaid, if that was the whole point, and then you shut the government down for 30 something days, put all these people through a whole bunch of mess, and that's not even getting into some of the travel stuff that's happened. So you're affecting people's everyday lives for that. And you hold out on this and then walk away with, we'll discuss it later. I don't understand. Like,
I do. I entirely understand it, but I have an opinion on it versus facts, but I feel like, the way that this goes is, hey, listen, there's a couple of spots we need to show that we can show up in an election. Virginia and New Jersey were tighter elections than what they thought at the time. They shut the government down and they leaned into their progressive side of their party pretty hard. And ultimately what ended up happening is after the elections were over, which most people called,
mhm.
they opened the government up and came to an agreement. Because the problem is that the biggest problem with government is that people think the government actually cares. And, you know, at the end of the day, there are social constructs out there that they provide for different people, you know, different social, um, economic type things like welfare and healthcare and Affordable Care Act and SBA. Like the government does a lot for us, but I don't know about you, man. I really don't want them in my life that much, and I don't think most everyday Americans don't. And I think that they understand that. And so what ends up happening is the government votes on their own raises. They vote on their own ability to shut down. See, I'm an extremist. You and I, this is where you and I differ in some things. You know, I'm a hard nosed, like, consequence person. If the government shuts down, there should be consequences that happen to prevent it from ever happening. Because think about it: if the Democrats are the ruling party and the government shuts down under them, if the Republicans were doing what just happened in this whole negotiation, the roles were reversed, and it went a certain number of days, I think at that point the government automatically opens back up and they just keep moving, and whoever the ruling party is gets to make the decision on that one issue right now. Because you cannot let people there's too many people dependent on the government, which is a whole nother problem that we have. If anything, we just got shown a reminder of how dependent this country really is on our government.
I have no qualms about holding people accountable for that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, if it's most likely disingenuous, at least the idea that they were doing it with the intent of trying to keep 30 million people on Medicaid. I don't think that's really the
Yeah.
case. I think
No,
I think you're probably
it's the
right
opposite
that
of it.
it was a ploy to show their base that they were willing to do something, but obviously they weren't. You know, it's
I don't know. It was optics for a moment, dude.
momentary optics. My guess is that it's going to hurt them in the long run, but
Oh, 100%. And then this you look at the party, it's very fractured on that side right now of the aisle. You look and the progressives are lining up behind Mamdani, and then the regular middle of the road, the everyday Democrats are kind of not lining up behind him. So it'll be interesting to see, because the biggest problem with the Democrat Party has been that there hasn't been a message. It's been very mixed messaging.
mhm.
And so other than their ultimate message, which is Donald Trump's just the worst person that lives, and that's getting old. People are getting tired of that. You know what I mean? So I think that, after 10 years of hearing that, I think some people are starting to get tired of where the Democrat Party's at. So they've got to unify around something that they want to fix. That goalpost that you and I talk about, like, what is that
Yeah.
goalpost? They have to figure it out, because if not, they're going to get shellacked, and a strong Democrat Party is good for the country. We need the yin and yang.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. You know, it's important. It's important to have some altruistic leanings in government, because there are people who need support and there are people who need a helping hand. And if you just let the free market in and of itself do all of that stuff, then those things aren't going to happen.
Right.
It's
Right.
almost it's almost like it's not a way to set yourself up for success. You like that's
I like
you like
what you
that?
did there,
See what
man.
I
I
did
see
there?
where
You like
you're
that
going. Yeah,
segue?
you set us up for success in this transition, man. Way to go. Really
We're
appreciate it.
we're getting the hang of
So
this.
yeah, we're getting it good. No, so when it comes to success, man, I'm curious, what does success look like to you, Sterling? Like, it's something that you and I talk about, is our lives and how we live our day to day. But what does that look like to you that makes you feel, hey, I've made it, I'm satisfied?
I think part of success is, for me at least, I think a lot of the times it has mostly to do with one of the things that one of the things I want to bring up, specifically goal setting. So I pick a goal for myself, and I like to do a short term, a near term, and a long term goal. So I may say my short term goal for this week is to finish prepping my house for winter. That's my short term. My near term goal is, I want to, maybe I want to lose 5 pounds over the next few months, and then I set, set like a 1 year, a 5 year, and a 10 year long-term goals. And usually, generally speaking, those are more financial things for me. But that's I think when you have a point and you're working towards it, one, it helps you keep motivation. If your only goals are set out 10 years from now, it's hard to keep your eye on the ball when those are the only things you're working towards. But when you mix those in, when you get those wins, it has a positive effect. You feel like, okay, I achieved this one thing. I should be able to achieve this
Yeah.
next thing down the line too.
Right.
What about you? What do you think of that?
Well, so I look at it a little, I mean, obviously similarly, but I'm not a huge goal setter. I am actually the inverse to you on this one. Or the adverse, I should say. Um I I have things I want in life and I go get them. I don't necessarily make like a major goal about
Mhm.
it. It's not like I'm like, hey, I want a house and a pool and all this stuff and it needs to look this way and it needs to be this. There's no specificity behind any of the stuff that I want, except for when it comes to finances. When it comes to my finances, I'm very goal oriented and making sure that I'm saving and that I'm living within my means and things like that. But for the most part, with everything else, it's kind of what my family wants when we want it. Let's go after it, and let's get it. And so, while I appreciate, you've always been that way. You've always been very like goal driven and like you have this tangible thing to obtain. For me, it's I can't ever stop working towards something.
Mhm.
So it's just easier to never have a finite thing because then I just don't want to get complacent.
Mhm.
And so it's just an ever evolving thing for me. So I look at it very different. It's probably a little bit of how I was raised. I was raised by a single mom who we just, we had enough.
Mhm.
And so for me, like it's success is is earned, but it can be lost
Yeah.
very quickly. And stability and satisfaction are that way as well. And so for me, it's a drive every day to get up and not lose what I earned, if that makes sense, because it's all momentarily, like ours.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, okay. I can see that, especially knowing you the way that I do. That I can understand that. Um, so I wanna ask you a couple of questions and just
yeah,
see what your gut reaction is. Um, so say I said to you, that I was in the top point 0.3 earners in the United States. How much money a year do you think I would need to roughly do you think I'd need to make to be in the top point 0.3?
my guess is 400,000.
You know what? You're more realistic than I thought you would be. I think that you're more realistic than most people. Top point 0.3 is roughly about $1 million. Puts you in the top
Okay.
0.3%. So that means out of the 349 million people in the United States, you are one of right around a million to put you in the top point 0.3. So $1 million a year puts you in rare company, right? Let me ask you this. If say I make $100,000 a year, say I did that, what percentage of earners do you think that would put me in?
Man, I can't see it being more than 10 to
Yep,
20%.
you're right, basically right on the money. It's about 23%. You're in the 77th percentile of
Yeah.
earners in the US at $100,000. So the reason I bring this up is one of the things that I wanted to talk about with when we're sitting down talking about success is having realistic expectations. I think, and this is more of a modern thing than anything else. I think when you see the Instagrams and the Facebook posts and that sort of stuff, I think it can, uh, you, bro, what you doing over there? What you got? What's that buzzing sounds? Okay, so the Instagram and
Phone call.
Facebook, I think it skews our perceptions of what in especially financial success looks like. Is it realistic to expect yourself to be a millionaire multiple times over? Is it an achievable goal? Of course it is. Anything is achievable if you really, really set your mind to it. If you're single-minded and you've got talent and work ethic on your side, could you do that? You could.
Yeah.
Is it
Yeah.
is it the thing that is it a worthwhile endeavor to try to accomplish that for the majority of people? And we're
No.
and yeah, and I think the important thing is to. It's not saying that I'm not poo pooing on somebody's dreams. Is not That's not what I'm trying to do.
No, you have to be realistic with
Yes,
yourself,
you got
man,
to be realistic with yourself.
and have a realistic view of what you bring to the table. You know what I mean?
And it's one of those things that when you listen to those statistics that, $1 million a year puts you in the top 0.3% of earners. $100,000 a year basically puts you at the 80th percentile ish.
Yeah.
$100,000 is really doable for a lot of people.
Yeah.
If that is a thing that you could do. You could do this. I think more than 80% of people, if they put their mind to it and are diligent and really set that goal, and that's what I want to do, and I'm going to figure out how to do it. I think most people could do that, or at least vastly more
Yeah.
than 20% of people could do it. So I think
Yeah.
that it's having those realistic goals is a way to achieve success, if that makes sense. I think it does.
Yeah, it does. It does. I think expectations often can either make or break different situations. And so I think if you expect that you're going to make $250,000, $500,000 a year, and you're only making 100,000, you're never going to be satisfied. So, I think the big thing for me is understanding that just because I'm not making what I want to make, or I'm not where I want to be, does not mean by any stretch that I am unsuccessful, and does not mean by any stretch that I am not making what I need in the moment I'm in. Because to me, success is being able to retire when I'm ready to retire. Success is being satisfied in the situations of life, because there's different seasons of life where our money needs change, where so when we first start out, we need less money, and then we have a family, and there's a middle part of our life where we need more money. And so just being able to meet those obligations and those needs at that time, and that if I'm on pace for that, yeah, I would love to be a multimillionaire, many times over. But at the end of the day, I tell you this all the time, Sterl. The only thing in the world I need is the money to pay off my house, because to me, I would be the richest person. If my house was paid off, I'd be happy. So, it's really comes down to um, what makes you satisfied in the situations you're in life, because what our view of success is very different than maybe some other people's view of success. I know some people, my dad, for example, he'd give you the shirt off his back in a second, and really doesn't need much in life, doesn't want much, has no desire for a lot of things of the world, and he gives what little bit of success out of his business he has, to charitable things, and does things for people. So, to him, he's the happiest person on earth, and he's perfectly content. He's satisfied. From an outsider perspective, they might say, well, hey, why don't you get more for yourself? But to him, he doesn't need more.
Well,
And so,
if he's satisfied with it, I mean, ultimately that's what matters, right? Because
yeah,
nobody can be the measure of your satisfaction. You could spend your entire life chasing some, abstract figure that you want to make per year. And, nobody on their deathbed says, boy, I wish I had spent more time at work. I think do you have to have motivation? Do you need to do those sorts of things, not just for yourself, but but also for like the family you either have or anticipate having? You've got to do those things.
yeah,
You have to do those things. But I think if you're if you're continuously chasing the next thing, if you're moving the goalpost over and over and over again, especially those long-term ones, I think you're setting yourself up for failure. I think it's really important, like you said, set those goals. Like, I want to be able to retire when I want to retire.
Yeah.
I've got a number in mind, I've got an age in mind, and that's what I'm working towards. That's much better than I need $1 million in my bank account next year, or I am a piece of,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
that's just not, it's not a good way to go about it. Moreover, now let me ask you this as we talk about success. I came across something just kind of accidentally, and I wanted to get your opinion on it. So, if you look at unpartnered men, and I want your this is a study from 2019. Unpartnered men had a median.
So it has relevance because it was prior to COVID.
Well, yes, but that's not the that's yeah. So unpartnered men had a median income of in the U.S. of $35,600, while partnered men had a median income of $57,000. So there's a couple of ways that I took this. Was one, this could be, well, unpartnered at 18. There's a big difference in income compared to unpartnered at 35. Do you think that this signifies that men are more motivated when they have a family to be motivated for? Or do you think it's men with more motivation, making more money, are more likely to have a family to begin? Because I was
That's tough.
thinking about that, and
So
I was having a hard time coming up with
I'm
something
not really
answer.
sure which way you go with that because, for me, when you read that data, where my head went was, well, yeah, they've got more to lose.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So they're gonna grind harder to be a better provider in that situation, you know? But I don't know. I mean, because I can tell you right now, I was not making good money when I was a kid,
Mhm.
when I was that age, when I was 23 or, 19 or whatever. Um, but I got married at 23. And when I got married at 23, I made $25,000 as my salary for the year, plus commission,
Right.
working in a small insurance office in the middle of North Carolina. You know what I mean? So there wasn't like the commission was huge, and my wife didn't make much starting out. So as an educator, so I think, when I think about that, it's kind of like, well, I'll say it to you this way. My father-in-law told me something when I bought this house that I'm in now,
Mhm.
and I didn't understand it, and I just kind of went with it. It sounded good at the moment, but I've grown to understand it because I've lived it.
Mhm.
Is if you can afford it now, it gets easier to afford later.
Yep.
And I think that the mentality of a married man versus or a partnered man versus an unpartnered man is, hey, look, we can take on a little more debt. I'm not in this boat alone.
Mhm. It's interesting.
And and so I think that, when you take on more debt, you need more money to pay for said debt. So I would imagine that there's a little bit of you just buy more stuff or you need more
Right.
stuff. So you gotta grind to get to a better income spot.
I guess maybe call like I see where you're saying, what you're saying, and like there's definitely part of me that's like, yeah, no, that does make perfect sense in this scenario. There's part of me that and call me a bit cynical, but there's part of me that wonders, you know, that wonders, maybe is it the case that maybe just being that motivated is a precursor to being more likely to end up married with a family, etc. You know, I wonder if that's because let's be honest. When we've talked about this before, protection, provision are big things,
Yeah.
and if you are doing well financially, you can easily show that provision aspect. So does that make you more likely? I
I don't think so because, looking at it and looking at it from like my view of this subject,
Mhm.
it's so I come from, again, going back to a single mom. I come from a mom that, that she had a couple of husbands along the way, but, that helped out and paid bills. But I see that smirk. Don't worry, we won't tell mom. She's not watching this. 5 is not a couple. But but anyway, just watching her when I came out into the world, I really didn't know, like, I didn't have a sense of a natural motivation that just pushed me into, like, I want this for myself. I want this for myself. I want this for myself.
Mhm,
I want this house. I want this car. I want this. When I was single and young, I wasn't thinking that way.
mhm.
But then when I met my wife and, or when she became my wife and we got together, well, I wanted all those things, but it wasn't for me that I wanted them.
Okay.
It was it was for her,
Mhm,
and it was for our future family, and it was to give stability, and it was to provide and protect. But ultimately, all this stuff around me can go away tomorrow, and I'm still gonna be okay, you know? At the end of the day, the things I don't wanna lose are the family that I built. So, I think for me, they provided me the motivation and what the fuck?
Done.
This one? But no, but it provided me the motivation and the ability to see beyond my moment now, like where I'm at and where I was at then, because if it were me, I would be perfectly content making $35,000, $40,000 a year by myself. You know what I mean? But they made me want more.
Okay.
And they also made me need tangibly speaking, they made me need a lot more
Sure.
too because 'cause they're expensive, I call L my broke best
Yep.
friend, so,
Yep.
nothing like it, but no, it's so I didn't know that that motivation was there until I got to this point in life where it was there, if that makes
No,
sense.
yeah, that does. I don't know, man. Like, I think there is something to be said in that vein because, being in a similar position, yeah, I definitely find that I am more motivated or at least partially motivated by that. But like I say, if you look back through the history of humanity, 40% of men procreated and 80% of women did.
Yeah.
So that just makes me feel like, is it out and out fact? Is that total proof? But no, but boy, I really do wonder if that motivation, if that drive, the attractiveness to women that brings, is that making people more likely to be partnered? Like I said, I don't know,
Well,
and I'm just
this is a great time to say
mm,
this. That statement right there kind of brings up that thing I say to you all the time. We don't have to go into detail about it. They can use their mind. But in the Northeast where we are from, if you have the sixes, women typically love you.
it's true. That is in fact the case. All right, so let me ask you this. I'm gonna say a phrase in terms of in the framework of success. I'm just curious what it brings to mind for you. Being comfortable, being uncomfortable.
Man, that it goes back to what I just said a second ago about my father-in-law, knowing that I can afford it now, but not really seeing the finances of it and knowing that my income hasn't changed. Because that's the thing we don't understand when we purchase something or do something in the moment,
Uh-huh.
we don't know what that future earnings is going to look like. We know what we're making now and we know we can do it then, and it might be a stretch to afford something and you're gonna be a little uncomfortable for a while. But then your income, if you're doing the things you need to do
Uh-huh.
and you're getting up every day and you're putting in the hustle and you're showing up on time and you're present at your job, a lot of times that income is gonna get to a point where that thing in the past that made you uncomfortable is just a little more comfortable every
Uh-huh.
time. And so that's where I go with it is, just understanding that the things that make me uncomfortable today most likely, if I just put a little hustle behind it, aren't gonna make me uncomfortable in the
Okay.
future.
Yeah. Okay. I can see that. That makes sense. Yeah, for me it's more as an example, like, I'm and that me, like, I have no problem. I enjoy working overtime. Do I want to do it? No. Is it my favorite thing to do? Absolutely not. But, I'm okay going through that discomfort. I'm comfortable with it in the pursuit of achieving a specific goal. And so that's kind of what it brings to my head is being okay with being uncomfortable in the moment to bring something positive into your life. Being willing to hustle and go through the discomfort of having to go through do all of this extra stuff to achieve something.
Well, everything is sacrifice, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like,
Yeah.
one of the best thing man, we are on a trend, so vocabulary words for the days, kids, if you're paying attention, is success, sacrifice, stability, satisfaction. As you can tell, it's S for Sterling Day, folks, and so we are just gonna go with our S words today, not being one of them. But anyway, no, so when you think about it, let me ask you this. So, when you talk about, going back for a second, I just wanted to ask you motivation
Hmm.
and kind of the motivation behind the why and which one catches up
Hmm.
first. Is it that you're more successful, which breeds the family, or is it the other way around? You know, um, I feel like, and I think you'll understand this, there's a fear that happens as dudes
Hmm.
and leaders of the household of it's all on us
Sure.
and it's all on our shoulders,
Hmm.
and we take that on. It's not like, and it's not realistic to think that way. I mean, my wife's working, my wife keeps our household together. My wife knows where the pizza cutter is that I can never seem to find,
Hmm.
just the little like all the details she knows, right? And whereas I'm a very broad spectrum kind of
Hmm.
person. So,
Yeah, I'll
you
say you're
know,
on the spectrum.
yeah, thank you. Very. Like, I don't know how far, but, it's certainly to the right of that spectrum and not to the left. But anyway, no, but I genuinely I think that there's something to be said for that weight of the family and the weight of our lives that we live on a daily basis and that fear that nobody really wants to talk about, that thing that keeps you up at night, that thing that makes you do your overtime, that thing that makes you hustle to have that success and to have those satisfactions. Yes, those are all there, but it's a fear of not losing what you have.
Well, I mean, and it's a known fact that people will work harder not to lose something than they will get
Yeah,
something. That I understand. Excuse me. I when you talk about that, it does it does bring to mind, my own experiences with that sort of thing. Yeah,
yeah,
if you are the primary earner in your home, there is more. Yeah, weight. I think weight's a good term for it. Weight is
yeah,
a good term for it. It's one of those things that you and I talk about this. There's nobody coming to save you, you know?
yeah,
And
all
we
the
talk about this
time.
all the
I
time.
mean,
That
how
there's
often do we say that?
yeah, there's nobody coming to save you. The only,
As dudes, guys, I
as a
can tell
man,
you
yeah,
100%, no one's coming to save
there's
you. Find yourself a battle
yep,
buddy and hope that that lifeboat doesn't take on more water as quick as you can
yep.
bail it, because nobody's coming.
Yeah, no, there's nobody coming to save you, which is a good and a bad thing. It gives you an opportunity to rise to the occasion. And I'm sure you can speak to this as well, but there's times where I've been like, I don't know how the I'm going to manage this.
God, right?
But then you put your nose down, you put your head down, you bust through and you
Uncomfortable
do it.
then, comfortable later.
Yes, uncomfortable now to be comfortable later. And like I say, I it's
See,
such a
I'm
good
just
point. You really
intrinsically
make up a good
motivated out
point
of
there.
fear.
Yeah.
I'm intrinsically motivated out of fear
Hmm.
because my fear in life is that my wife and daughter one day look at me and go, "You failed us. You didn't do what you were supposed to do." And that right there, like, I don't really say that out loud often,
Hmm.
but that really is the thing behind it all that keeps me up at night sometimes when situations look tough or they've looked bleak over the years or I wasn't sure what I was gonna do or, even down to changing jobs to move my family forward. You know me, Sterl. I was at a job for 12 years. I held down a desk, became complacent. I thought I was gonna buy the business from the person I was working for, and it just wasn't what I needed. And I hemmed and hawed on changing that job for 2 years before I finally found one that I was willing to take a
Mhm,
risk on. And once I stepped out and took a bet on myself and kind of did that, everything worked out. But the problem is that I was afraid what if I fail?
mhm,
What if I failed? Because it's not just me
mhm.
that I'm failing.
Yep.
Me, I can handle. Me can go back to making $35,000 a year again
Mhm.
and nobody else around. But everybody else, I want to be happy and I want to be comfortable,
Yeah.
you know? So,
Yeah, I don't think men a lot of times get, because it is that it is in a way kind of a thankless job, right?
Mhm.
Because, it's it's an expectation that you hold yourself to. It's an expectation that your family's going to hold you to. And that's okay because it's your job. But it's not like, look at Christmas, dad gets the worst gifts. Most of the time he paid for them, or a lot of.
yeah, but we're also the ones who are the most surprised about what everyone else
Yeah.
got. So,
Yeah, that's true. But it's like I say, it's not that there needs to be thanks. I think to an extent there has to be. There has to be,
yeah,
if your partner is not appreciative of the things that you do, there's going to be building resentment and all that stuff. And you
yeah,
don't want that in your
yeah.
life. But, you also have to find some and again, you can correct me if correct me if you think I'm doing a different thing, saying the wrong thing here, but to me, I think you have to try and find some joy in those successes for yourself. You know.
Yes, and you know that that has been a big struggle of mine
Mhm.
is finding joys in those moments because I finish something and I look at it and I go on to the next,
Yeah.
I mean, think about when you came down to visit,
Mhm.
but when the pool first went in, I was excited about the pool, but I couldn't be out there long because the grass wasn't done, the job wasn't finished, and whereas my wife is just able to sit there and be intrinsically like proud of everything because she's got a pool in her backyard and so she doesn't see all the mess. I see the so but for me that's a motivator.
Right.
Um it's probably not a healthy motivator if I'm being honest because I would imagine that it attributes to a lot of the stress that I put on myself at
Mhm.
times. But, that's where finding positive outlets to deal with stress is a good thing. We'll talk about that at some point. But, the big thing is like, I mean, you've gone through a lot the last couple of years. One of the big goals for you was getting back to being a homeowner and living your life the way that you have it. And you've done that. And so, I know that there's other goals, retirement, different things you want to do. And to me, it's insane that like now we're starting to think about where we want to be in retirement versus going, oh man, the
That's
retirement's that
that's
little 5% they take out of my check and put in an account I never see.
that's never
You
gonna
know what I mean?
happen. Yeah.
No, and now we're sitting here talking about it, thinking about
Mhm.
it, planning for it. So, I mean, at the end of the day, y'all, it really comes down to this. Don't ever let anybody else define what success is for you internally because you could be the happiest person right where you are in your life in the middle of a storm
Mhm.
or in the middle of what might not be the most successful thing to other people. And you might not be living this Instagram life,
Mhm.
the influencer life and have all these things. But you know what? Be proud of what you got. If you got your little piece of land and you got yourself little family and you're doing what you can, to provide for them, just be happy with where you're at and stop to give yourself a pat on the back once in a while because you deserve it.
Well, and I agree that that is you have to do that. You have to go, you know what? I did a pretty good job. I did a pretty good job.
Yeah.
On the flip side of that, I think you have to remain motivated. I think one of the worst
Yes.
things you can do is be totally complacent. Well,
Yep.
I got my apartment and I got a car and I can go to work and
I don't need anything
I
else.
got my Xbox and good enough. that's if you're happy with if you are genuinely happy with that, I can't begrudge you. But my intuition tells me that the majority of men are not. There is more to life than those things. So, and that's kind of a segue into one of the other points that I was hoping we could hit on. Barring financial success, what if we both kind of agree that the major marker for success is if not wealth, then financial security. I think
Yes.
we can both agree on that. What
Yep.
would you say would be the next marker that you would use as your bar for success of being able to say on your deathbed that you have lived a successful life?
Well, to me, it's, some people want kids, some people don't. Some people want a spouse, some people don't. Some people lived with their spouse their whole life. To me, the biggest marker of my success would be looking back if I was on my deathbed without regret,
Right.
without a lot of regrets, making it through going, hey, you know what? I feel good about what I've done. I feel good about where I've been.
Mhm.
I feel good about who I did it with. I feel good about the people that sat at my table, so to speak.
Mhm.
Um, we're not promised tomorrow. So, I've said this before. I've had issues with different family members over the years just
Mhm.
because of different family dynamics. We choose who sits at our table. Sterling, you are like my brother.
Mhm.
I've known you, gosh, a long time. Um, and that's an understatement. But looking back and being able to look at those relationships, because relationships are the thing that drives us, man. Ultimately, at the end of the day, the relationships we have with people and the success of them, like, I'd rather have a couple of long-term friends and, a happy family than ever have a million friends or acquaintances,
Mhm.
So I just, I guess to me, it's, did I take advantage of the time I had with the people that I wanted to spend it with?
100%.
And am I happy
Yeah.
about that?
Let me ask you this, just
Yeah.
in regard to something you said there. I wonder, and maybe I'm way off base here, but I don't feel like I am. You and I have talked about this before that I'm kind of a believer in there's blueprints for society and the way that it's supposed to work. And I think those blueprints involve uh partnerships with another person, like an intimate partnership relationship with another person. And and again, it's one of those things I just well, that I didn't really plan on having kids. Wasn't necessarily something I was super into. And then I got to a point in life where I was like, well, if I'm going to do it, I may as well do it now, like before I get too old and start shooting blanks. So,
Guys, I just want to point out that Sterling was raised as an only child, although he does have siblings, and so a little bit of that might be some only child syndrome that we'll unpack another day.
well,
But
no, but I think that like a lot of people say, I don't want kids because they are okay, children are work. But I've never, I've never met anybody who was like, I wish I had never had kids. And I wonder how much of each one is just trying to say the right thing.
yeah, yeah, I could see that. The thing is, um, it's socially unacceptable to say that didn't want the kids you have. You know what I mean? It's society kind of shuns you for that. You know what I mean? So I think it's one of those like unspoken things. I'll give you an example, man. And I don't care. And you guys can all judge me there, dudes. Any one of you who's a dad and the mom leaves and that baby's screaming and you can't stop it because you were not the mom. You all thought the same thing. Gosh, I shouldn't have had kids. At least one point or another. I don't care. It happened. Yes, it happened to me once. I remember it very vividly, and it was a moment, but I was 7 hours with a 6-month-old baby and no mom and was freaking out, you know? So, but I've never sat there and said, "Oh, I wish I never had
So
kids." Not
let
one
me
time.
ask you this. Do you think when you made the statement, and again, I'm just wondering, this is me, call
Yeah.
me playing devil's advocate here. You know, you said, well, some people don't want to get married, some people don't want a partner, some people don't want to have children. Do you think that that is genuinely what they want, or do you think it's more leaning into the fact that it's societally acceptable now to have that opinion? I just I just see a lot of very sad and depressed and lonely people. And I see a lot of people who say, "No, I am 10 times happier single than I ever was with a partner." Yeah. Mhm.
I think that people are scared. I think people are worried that they're going to screw it up. I think people have had bad experiences in relationships or they haven't found that long-term
Mhm.
partner. And so it scares them. I think that a lot of this comes out of a place of fear. I really genuinely do. And I think some people are more that like, and it starts with a fear of
Mhm.
rejection. Hey, Sterl, I'm a girl. I love you. I want to be with you. I think we're going to build a beautiful family. Well, I don't want that
Mhm.
with you. And so I think some people, my wife's best friend, she's a beautiful lady. She's wonderful. She's got everything that, is attractive to a guy. She's 40 years old. She's been very successful living on her own. She travels the world,
Mhm.
you know, but she hasn't had a significant long-term relationship or a spouse.
Mhm.
Or and has never really had the desire for kids. But I often wonder if she ever feels like she's missing out. I don't know. And I don't want to bring it up because I certainly don't want her to feel judged by me in that situation where, because that's certainly not what that question is pointed out or pointed to do. It's more of, just how does it make you
Yeah.
feel and, but I genuinely believe that no, I don't think anybody wants to live alone all the
Mhm.
time. I don't think, I mean, I can tell you right now, at night, my wife and daughter are in bed by 9:30, 10 o'clock. I don't typically go to bed till 12, but those couple of hours of, like, alone time where it's alone, it's great that it's alone,
Mhm.
but it's better because I know that I'm not,
Right.
if
It
that makes
no, it
any sense.
absolutely does.
There's a peace to
Yeah.
it of, "Hey, my family's sleeping, a hard day's work's
Mhm.
done, now I can just kinda relax, watch a show, watch a game, play a game, whatever, right? But it's my time in that moment, but I earned it because at the end of the day, I took care of everything I needed to do so that I could have that."
Let me yeah, that makes an absolute ton of sense. I And get kind of going back to this whole, like, and you and I have discussed this a billion times, like the blueprint for society. I think w- when markers of success for some people turn into these things that are, one, unrealistic, two, basically unachievable, and and envy becomes such a, because I look at it this way. So say I'm a dude and I am in the top, say, 10% of earners. Say I'm, 6 feet tall. I make 150 grand a year, 130, 140, something like that. And I am a fairly good looking person, personable, all that stuff that you want. The reality is that my options for the opposite sex are,
And next week, Sterling's Fantasy, we'll talk about that.
yeah. I mean, um, my options for partners, women who would be interested in me and are higher. And one day we'll talk about the whole dating app thing and dating and all of relationships and all that stuff.
I know where you're going with this, and all I'm gonna tell you is I believe it depends on what you want from your partner. If you want that person who wants to be a stay-at-home wife, who is wants to take care of kids and all that, great. I think when you make 140 grand a year, 150 grand a year, there becomes a point where, yes, it affords you an ability for your wife to stay home. But in today's society,
That's
there's a lot of highly driven
right.
women to be in the workplace too and like make their careers. So what I'm saying when I say that is I I think that your pool of partners
Mhm,
depends on what you want. Do you want that person that's going to be driven with
mhm.
you to go achieve the same things that you're achieving and retire at a young age and want to grind as hard as you can now for the next 15 years? Or do you want that person who's just going to kind of go through life with you on a day-to-day basis, you know? And so I think to each person that's probably a little bit
Mhm,
different because, you know, there's plenty of fish in the sea, and some of those fish in the sea might not have all the things that other fish
mhm.
do, but can still be great partners. So
So
I think it's all in what you're
that's
looking
not
for.
quite where I was headed with that.
Oh, okay.
So more what I was thinking about was, so say that I, and just to toss out some statistics from dating apps real quick here. So 20%,
Not a fan of dating apps, by the
huh?
way. Not a fan. Not a fan of dating
Well,
apps, by the
and
way.
neither, and
They've ruined the ability for
well,
people to communicate and date.
one, you're married. Your wife would really not like it if you were famous.
Yeah, people frown on that. Like whenever I get on there and I tag myself as married, I get a lot of really messed up
But
comments.
it's one of those things. It's like, so say so about 20% of the men on dating apps get about 80% of the likes
Yeah.
or connections or
It's the
swipe.
80-20
Yeah.
rule, man. It's life.
So I want you to think about that. So if as a man, I'm on this dating app and I have access to about 80% of the women, what would be my motivation to slow down or take one seriously when my options in reality are quite high? And then you look at it from the women's point of view. So these women are swiping, they're going to get likes from 80% of the dudes. They're only going to match with about, the only ones they're going to be interested in are about the 20% that I was just talking about. So
Yeah.
what is their motivation? So it's like, if 80% of the women are all going after the same men, and then 80% of the men basically don't exist. What is, like, how do you reconcile that with marriage and long-term relationships and procreation and all of those things that you and I both kind of agree that you need for society to glue itself together?
You don't. You can't reconcile it because the gap's too big. So what's going to happen is you're going to have, and we're already seeing the statistics drop on single people, people getting married
Mhm.
later in life. You think about the birth rate in our country and how quickly that's fallen as a whole. You think about, the marriage rate in our country and the successful marriage rate in our country. You know why it's that way? Because people have options. Nowadays they can get married, and if they don't like it, they can
Well, let
change
me
it.
ask you this, and this is one thing that I've kind of pondered. Is it that so if it's 20% of the dudes have access to 80% of the women, and 80% of the dudes have access to 20-ish percent, somewhere in that ballpark. If that's the case, and the majority of women are going after this small subset of men, I really was going somewhere with this. Kind of lost my train of thought. Give me a second. I'll get it back.
We got completely off of
Well,
success
no,
though,
and this was
so
where I'm tying this back to success.
okay.
If that's the case, can you say, because to me, I really think one of the markers for success is having that partner and having some legacy and having children.
That's an intrinsic value to you, not an outward value to the
Right.
world. You know what I
I
mean?
to me that's,
That's of
and
intrinsic
there's certain
value.
things you have to do to get there. I think for most people, if you want,
I feel like where you're trying to tie this to is that the success dictate the fact that you get that you're one of the 20% getting the 80%. And I think the answer is no. I'm gonna say this, and I think it's a very simple answer. I think people are inherently shallow,
Hmm.
and sevens or better are gonna do well on the dating apps.
Oh, to an extent, I agree, but I'm just my thought process there is it so yes, I agree that when it comes to dating apps, people are shallow, and that's why things are the way that they are. So, in today's society, does it still seem reasonable to use that creation of family as a marker for your own success? Considering taking into consideration that you and I both agree about its importance.
Yeah, I do. I think that it is because I think at our core, we still look at people that have a family and the house and everything else when we were young and go, "Huh, that's a nice life."
Hmm.
You know, nobody looks at it and goes, "Oh, that's a terrible life." That's not, you know what I mean? So, I think for me, when I look at that, and when you pose that question and you think about, is it a good marker for success? I think it's an even better marker now for success than it's ever been.
Well, that's a good way of looking
And
at it.
and the reason why I think that is because it is fewer and farther
Uh-huh.
between. So if you're one of the fortunate ones to be able to have that and have a successful family and have a successful relationship, I do think people, see happiness and are drawn to
Hmm.
it. And so some people are going to look at it and think it's successful. Again, it goes back to now is the person who was raised in an area where their dad was abusive and their mom was a drunk and and their relation they saw was in and out relationship struggles and all that. Are they going to look at that as a success? Maybe not. Maybe they think that that's something that they would never imagine happening. But I would imagine that deep down, they imagine having it the opposite of what their parents
Hmm.
had it, if that
Yeah,
makes
it
sense.
100%
And
does.
so,
Yeah.
yeah, so, I'm a big believer in learning from
Hmm.
mistakes, from people's mistakes, before me. And, so I watched my mom, do her best, but I mean, she had quite a few failed relationships when I was younger. And in watching that, I learned the things that, I wanted. And it was never, I don't ever want to be married. What I did learn is I'm going to try this once. And if it doesn't work with one, I'm never doing it again.
Hmm.
Like, because, I don't want, I wouldn't want to, you know what I mean? But what I also know is that for me, success is being able to hold my family together,
Hmm.
and so,
So we're running pretty low on time. I want to
yeah,
I
yeah,
want to point one more statistic out that I've kind of been keeping in my back pocket here. And I may or may not have been trying to lead you in this direction for about the last 25 minutes.
probably. Jalen Brown has no left hand. Yes, I know. No, I'm joking.
He does. Uh, so after the age of 65, how
Yeah.
many more years on average do you think a married man gets than an unmarried man?
Oh, my guess is probably 25
Well, no, Jesus, no, it's not that much.
or
No,
20.
not
20.
that much. All right. No,
No?
no. It's
Hold on. I thought you were okay.
so
No, probably 10.
no, not quite that much either. You're bringing me down, bro. No, so on average, if you are a married man, you are more likely to outlive a man of the same age. Like, so say you and another dude are both 65. Other things equal. If one of you is married and not the other one isn't, the one who's married is more likely to live about a 2.25 years longer.
Okay. Which is surprising because usually women drive you into your grave, not out of it. But,
But
you know,
that's kind of why I feel like
it's happiness, man.
there needs to be a shift. And this will be my kind of closing remark here. I feel like there needs to be a shift in what we as a society look at as successful. Because I know I've been kind of beating this dead horse, but you can't base it solely on how much money you have in the bank. You can't take that. You
No.
just can't. Should you be motivated? Should you be working towards goals? Should your financial stability and long-term financial solvency be a concern for you? 100%. And it should be a high motivator for you. But really, I think we need a shift from what looks good outwardly and what looks good in a Instagram post, and shift towards things like community and building a family and having children and having that legacy to go, knowing that there is something that you've built that is going to outlive you. And to me, that is really the most important marker of success. I'll let you
Yeah,
handle the end of things.
I agree with that. So here's the thing, man. We talked kind of all over the board about what we think success is, how it feels, what it looks like, how it's different to everybody else. All I can say is that when it's my time and I'm laying on my deathbed, and if I'm surrounded by people and I look around that room and it's the people I love and care about and cherish the most that I took care of, that are there with me in my final moments, and I can celebrate the successes of my life because of that moment that brought them all there, because you can't take anything else with you when you go, man. But the faces you see when you're on your deathbed and the people that are around you kind of, to me, define the success of my life. My lifelong success. So I think I hear you. It's not about your bank account. It's certainly not in my eyes either. It's not about the bank account. It's not about, to me, it's success is defined by the satisfaction that I have for knowing that I've done what I could and taking care of the people that I love. And as long as I can hit those things, I feel like I'm the most successful person in the world, and it doesn't matter if you don't think I am. That's the best part about it. But, so guys, thanks for joining us. I really appreciate it. As always, we're happy to spend, just about an hour with you all, talking about success today, talking a little bit about sports, recap. Patriots are 8-2. Celtics are going to be a long season. Hopefully Joe Mazzulla, and Joe we trust, I think, maybe. Not really sure. I might be getting the Nico Harrison treatment at the end of the season. But no, ultimately, guys, thanks for joining us. Just remember, hit us on the socials, hit us on in the inbox if you have questions, or if you want to make some comments, you got some suggestions on what you think success looks like to you, or if you want us to expound on any of the things we discussed today a little further. But one thing we're going to do every week, and I'm just going to leave you with this, is, guys, go out in the world and just stay a dude.
I'm the king of my driveway, mowing lines so straight. Got a toolbox full of glory and a mortgage by the plate. I'm a modern man with an old school